evening. I'd like to open up the meeting for May 26, 2015 work session. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Councilmember Clayton? Here. Councilmember Kendall?
Here.
Councilmember Warner?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Quinn? Here. Mayor Moore?
Here.
This time, if we could rise for the silent prayer, a moment of reflection, please. Right, if we can do the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in the following manner. The annual notice was forwarded to the Asbury Park Press, the Coaster Star Ledger on January 2nd, 2015, and posted in a bulletin board the same date. All notices are on file with the city clerk.
Follow-up from the work session of Monday, May 11th, 2015, and regular session of May 13th, 2015. From the mayor and council. The first item I have is Councilman Werner, had mentioned some concern about crosswalks on 3rd and 4th Avenues, at Pine Street. Public maintenance will start, to paint, more visible crosswalks, the more visible markings, at those intersections. Councilwoman Clayton, she expressed concerns about a workforce development program, and in an effort to maintain a mechanism to get the word out to the public about jobs within the area, a bulletin board will be placed in City Hall's lobby. Will basically list jobs in the area. Currently, there's a section on the city's website entitled Employment and Training. That section is going to be changed to read Job Postings and Training to make it easier to find. I had a short discussion with Tom Gilmore about that this morning. From the public, Dan Harris had a question about trash enclosures. Should the trash enclosures be covered at three sides or 4 sides? It's been determined that it has to be at 4 sides. If anybody sees any violations, please let code enforcement know.
Atlantic Avenue.
I'm sorry?
Atlantic Avenue. Dan Harris gave us a tour, right, Jesse?
Absolutely.
We know where in Atlantic?
I'll describe it to you later.
No, I'll go later.
Right next to the Second Baptist Church.
All right, Jerry Scrano, he expressed our concern in a number of areas. Number one, that there were commercial vehicles parked on the street overnight. Cars are blasting their radios, bicycle riders are not wearing helmets. And there were 3 citizen on patrol vehicles all parked within the same block. All these concerns were forwarded to the police department during our staff meeting on Thursday, May 14th. And the police department will be following up on that. Rita Morano, she expressed a couple of concerns. I followed up with all of the department heads. There are no department heads that are holding money for more than 48 hours. And second, department heads have been instructed to bring their departments into compliance with the appropriate collective bargaining agreements regarding comp time. And the last issue that I have is Linda Fahey. She brought up 2 issues. Number one was speeding cars on 4th Avenue, which were also referred to the police department. And the second issue was on Memorial Drive between 5th Avenue and Sunset. Trees were cut down by the property owner. I had contact with the Shade Tree Commission, who is aware of the situation. They've indicated to me that the trees were dying, and that the owner had agreed to replace those trees, those old trees, with new shrubbery, and trees. That's all I have at this time.
Good job. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. All right, the first item on your agenda, special events and wedding applications. Tom Gilmore.
Good evening. We have 2 events on the agenda and 1 add-on. first event is an annual carnival that comes to the city, which will be here from July 1st to July 4th. There is an error in the application. The applicant applied to have it in Bradley Park. We never have it in Bradley Park. It's in Atlantic Park, because it just does a number on the park. So it will be in Atlantic Park.
Do we get a fee for that?
Yes.
There's no fee on the application.
Okay, sorry about that. The fee is $500 for the park, $250 for the application, plus insurance. You okay? The next one is the application from the Asbury Park Chamber of Commerce. Every year, or not every year, last year, we were fortunate enough to have Town Square Media come in and do broadcasts from the boardwalk in the visitors trailer. It was tremendously successful. It brought a lot of people to the beach early in the day from the number of promotions that they were doing that attracted people to the beach. So we're just asking permission to do that again this year. Okay. And there was an add-on from the Chamber of Commerce for the Asbury Park Loves Jazz Weekend. It's a weekend event. There's 3 components to it. On Friday night, they're asking to use the train station for an opening party, cocktail party with music. And then on Saturday, they're going to do an event in Press Plaza, which will be live music. And they'll close Press Plaza down between Lake and Cookman. And that event will run from 11 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. And then on Sunday, they're asking to use a city date for the Paramount Theater, where they will host a jazz concert. As part of that initiative, they'll be making a number of approximately 375 tickets available to children. Excuse me. I thought that was... 125. I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. 125 tickets available to students from the Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and...
Community grant.
Yeah, thank you.
So I just want to thank the Chamber for putting a jazz event together, since we haven't had a jazz event in the city for at least 2 years, right? And even though we RFP'd it now for next year, I really appreciate you stepping up and putting one together.
Yeah, and I just had a question about the special events committee, just in general. Because it's a cross street, we're good with that one? Right, it's not a major street. So.
Right, we did have a meeting today. We didn't have everybody available today because it was late notice, but we did have not as much of a problem by closing Lake Avenue for the other event that we looked at, which would have taken 71 spaces. I believe there's about 23 spaces in Press Plaza, and it is. You're exactly right. It's not across a major thoroughfare in the city.
I just want to make sure it's clear. Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
And I calculated the fees. They're approximately $400 right now. There may be, the Department of Public Works wasn't there at the meeting, so there might be a little higher than that.
Any other questions about special events?
Yeah, I know that you and Ms. Floyd were working on it, but do we have a time frame on like a checklist for special events?
Yeah, it's actually done.
Okay.
The Special Events Committee hasn't reviewed it yet.
Okay.
But once that's done, we'll bring it to you.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I have 2 other items on the agenda tonight. One is regarding the urban enterprise zone. I sent you a memo. There's actually 2 issues associated with the urban enterprise zone, one of which is requesting permission to close the corporation that we have. When the UEZ was set up, it was actually run by a corporation and not the city, the Asbury Park Zone Development Corporation. The corporation is still active, although there really isn't a board of directors anymore, but we're still required to file tax returns and things like that. So there's no need for it anymore. We don't get any funding from the state. So I'm requesting that we close that corporation, so we don't have to file any tax returns moving forward.
I just had a question about that. I can remember, like, was it a month ago, a month and a half ago, I asked the question about that. Like, what does since the UEZ is not funded anymore through the state, what's the purpose of the Asbury Park UEZ?
Well,
I thought you had given me like an explanation
Yeah,
of the value of it,
right,
but now it's going to be closed.
Well, there's two different parts to it. One, we used to get funding, so we set this corporation up to run that funding, and what that did was, the corporation's main mission was to take that funding and reinvest it back into the city. So we have no more funding. The state program is still in existence right now, so businesses that are in the city and in the urban enterprise zone, it's a geographic zone, can still sign up for the benefits associated with that, one of which is the reduced sales tax for retail, and the other is the exemption from sales tax for any thing that you purchase for your business.
Okay.
Right, so the program is still in place. The city just doesn't get any funding out of it anymore. We used to have a loan program, a facade program.
By closing those benefits from this.
Well, it's just an expense that we're incurring right now. Plus, we have, I also mentioned we have a second-generation account fund that needs to be transferred back to the city. There's approximately $11,000 in that right now.
Although it looks like we're designating it for a loan, no?
No. Two different things.
Okay, so then I was confused by that as well.
Right. So one is we have a second-generation fund, which is a fund that is funded by one loan that we still have outstanding, although there were other loans at one time, but there's a balance of about $11,000. There's $11,521.72 left in that, which if we close the corporation, then we just transfer that funding back to the city, just like we did when we funded the website. We transferred money back to the city.
Okay, so the only objection, so it would go back into the general fund? So
Well, it would go, there is a caveat there. We do have a line item for urban enterprise zone funds that the city still holds, and the caveat is that those funds must be used for a similar type UEZ project. So there is a contingency on it. It really can't go right into the general fund.
Okay, well, then that was my question, because I think we should use those funds in the spirit in which they were gathered.
Yeah, you can create the line item for it.
And the last UEZ issue here is that we do have one outstanding loan, which is being administered by the New Jersey Community Fund right now. The loan has come due, although there's still a balance there. The way it was set up, there would be a balloon payment. New Jersey Community Capital has asked us if we wanted to just close the loan out or actually let the applicant, they would extend the loan until January, where the applicant would still make monthly payments, but it would be paid off in January. The applicant is A&J Sneaker. They've had 2 loans with us. They're current, and they've been a very good customer of ours. So my recommendation would be that we extend the loan until January.
Okay.
And that money, once the corporation is turned out, those payments would come directly to the city.
Questions?
The last item is the fee for services on the beach. I apologize for the delay in getting the information back to you. I wanted to try to make it as current as possible, but because it was Memorial Day, as you can see, a lot of people didn't respond to our request.
So, Tom, I'll have to say I'm a bit disappointed in this. So it was like 2 meetings ago that I requested this. And we have 13 out of 31.
It was actually our last meeting when we talked about...
No, I reminded you at the last meeting. The meeting before that, when they originally came up, I had requested a memo, essentially, and to be honest with you, what I was looking for was like a bit of analysis, so an explanation of what this group of towns does, what this group of towns does. These towns, like for example, you have Belmar, Point Pleasant, and Seaside that all have more of a commercial waterfront. Like Seagirt and Ocean Grove they don't inform my decision on this very much. It's good that we have that information, but I was looking for a little bit more of an analysis of, here's some towns that are similar to Asbury Park, here's some towns that are very different, these are what the towns do across the spectrum, what they charge, and then you're telling me that 13 out of 31, you called the city clerks and you said, I'm Tom Gilmore from Asbury Park. I was just wondering about what you do with these beach fees in the morning, and you got no response?
No, I asked them whether they allowed service providers like yoga and like a boot camp on their beaches, and most of them said it's not permitted. The
No response ones I'm asking about.
They never got back to me. I never had any contact with those cities.
The clerks?
Yeah.
You called the clerks and
Yeah.
you couldn't get them?
Yeah, I called the clerks. I also called the people. Some of the bigger towns have special events coordinators, like Asbury Park.
It just is, again, like, this is 2 meetings later, and we don't have complete information to make a decision. I mean, I can sit down for a couple hours and make the calls, but I feel like that's not my role. I'm disappointed in the information here that we have to make the decision.
So the only thing is I'm not going to make this decision, right? So when you say RFP.
Right, those towns that said that they use an RFP, they wouldn't do what we're doing right now with the special events application, that they would go out for RFPs.
For yoga on the beach?
Yes, yeah, for service providers on the beach.
And then what is the cost to those service providers per summer, say? So let's say they
Well,
RFP'd yoga, and how much?
They don't have those services. Nobody has service providers on the beach right now. The ones that said RFP, that if they were going to do it, they would go out for RFP. So I think
So RFP means if we were going to do it, we
Yes.
would RFP it,
that's correct.
but we don't actually do it.
That's correct.
So there isn't one town in New Jersey that currently does this that we know of?
Your mama knows.
Of the ones that I contacted, no. And I think the real reason is that, people who do yoga, they don't make a lot of money when they're doing this. So when they do an RFP, they have to pay the city some type of competitive amount, just like we do with the stand-up paddle people and the surf people on the beach. So because their revenue is much larger, they're able to pay a larger fee to the city, whereas the yoga people don't, and quite frankly, most of them just sneak on the beach.
So if I Google beach towns and services before opening, nothing comes up,
Well,
essentially?
this is during the season.
Okay. All right, I don't know, okay.
It's just a category that I don't think the provider can afford, and therefore they haven't gone out to bid. We've asked yoga people to go out to bid before, and they're not interested. Their response was that we don't make enough money to do that. And usually it's part of a fee that they're already taking other courses and...
What about like the other guys though, like the workout team?
Yeah.
That seems to be like more of a like lucrative business model that has like a boot camp on the beach associated with it as a piece.
Mm-hmm.
Were there other places that do that?
No.
Nowhere.
Right.
So there's nowhere that does either of those
Well,
guys
I
sneak around?
can't say nowhere,
Right, okay.
because I didn't talk to everybody, so...
Right.
One
Any other
question.
questions?
Just one question. Tom, the company that does the boot camp, were you able to find out what equipment they were going to bring onto the beach?
I did not.
Anything else?
Okay, thanks, Tom.
The next item on your agenda, under presentations, all right, Deputy Chief, all right, Anthony Salerno, all right, he has 2 parking matters.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have 2 presentations tonight to make. One is a request for no parking on Monroe Avenue between Prospect Avenue and Ridge. That is caused by the fact it's a very narrow roadway. We've had multiple crashes of vehicles going in opposite directions, and we have a lot of children in that area. We've got the Boys Club, the swimming club, and young class preschool. And that road's always presented challenges, but with the increase of business at the school as well as the boys club in that area, we've had our share of challenges with traffic. So in order to make it wider, basically for vehicular traffic, we would like to have no parking on the north side of Ridge Avenue, which is right. We have a lot of students being picked up and dropped off at those three locations: boys club, swim club, and the preschool. For that reason, that's why we're presenting that. The north side, I'm sorry, north side of Monroe. Yeah. From Ridge to Prospect.
I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah, I just had a question. I drove by there today. I'm sure it makes it the Boys and Girls Club and those organizations are supportive of that. It's not going to cause them like a headache for parking. Have we talked to them at all?
No, I think, well, I didn't go to the locations. We had this request that came from the preschool, and then when we looked at where we should cut off the actual no parking, it made sense if we were going to do it for the preschool that we also add the boys club and the swim club on that side, because it is a very difficult roadway to navigate. And the boys club, as much as the school, they have a lot of drop off and pick up with the buses. We would probably be losing 4 or 5 parking spaces there that might come into play. So we did not check.
Okay. And it's designated, because there's a sign there, and I went by this morning. Would it be designated as a pickup and drop-off spot?
It would be no parking.
Okay.
We'd have the problem in the morning and in the afternoon, and then with the children there in the evening, we felt for safety purposes, and for the children as well as the vehicular traffic, we'd be better to do it, just make it all no parking.
Okay.
On that one side. Now, one other point of reference is that the residents there all have off-street parking. The residents have off-street parking. So the only ones that would be inconvenienced would be those folks that would park at the boys club, and there's a lot of other areas, especially around to the Prospect Avenue side, that there's parking.
Okay. Since it came from a request from the school, and we're going to do it for the Boys and Girls Club, is it too much just to ask to give a call to the Boys and Girls Club just to double check?
Too much to ask. We can do that.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sure they'll benefit from it. So I'm sure they'll be supportive. I just would, in case there's something we don't.
Yeah.
We're
I
not,
have no
not yet
problem
saying.
calling Doug Eagles and checking on that and see if there's any issues.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
Around 1:45 today, come to City Hall, I drove that block, and there were 16 cars parked on the north side. The majority of them were up by the school, and I'm thinking they're school employees. Then there was emptiness, and then once you got back down to the boys club, closer to Prospect, there were 3 or 4 cars parked there. I think we're going to impact the boys club. I think we're going to, I don't know if every house has a driveway. I tried to notice it going by, and some have, I'm going to say, a legit driveway, and some have maybe unlegit driveways where it's grass areas and not, a driveway, but they just like maybe park up there. The request is coming from the school, but it seems like the majority of the parking is from the school. So I don't, this is, again, you're the public safety. I know it's a narrow street, but it's no more narrow than Summerfield, and we have parking on both sides of Summerfield, and we get up and down.
That's correct.
I didn't go out there and tape measure this street, but I just know Summerfield is probably even narrower.
Mayor, it's the buses.
And the buses are from the school. The buses are from the school who's complaining, and I would say again, anybody can go there tomorrow during school hours. I would think the majority of the parking is, I'm going to say, from Ridge 2 blocks in, and then it alleviates, and then when you get closer to Wynn, there's nothing, and then when you get to the boys club, there's 4 or 5 cars, maybe employees from the boys club. So again, I would like to reach out to the boys club, obviously, and I think that they're shorter parking to begin with, aren't they?
They are. There's no parking right there.
So we're going to be taking away parking from their swim teams and everybody else. And again, this is a safety situation, which we have to rely on our professionals, which Tony, you and Joel and everything. I appreciate this, but Yeah, I was shocked to see how many cars were up there today.
Right.
And I was even thinking, like, is this something like we could do, number one, should we do a survey of all the residents? Should we do limited hours? Should there be no parking during school hours? And then residents can park their cars, on the street at nighttime when there are no school hours and snowstorms, blah, blah, blah.
Right, this morning when I went early, it was empty, essentially, those spots.
Right.
And it didn't feel, like you said, it was 4 cars wide. You could do it, for sure. It's not like you couldn't, it's tight, though.
Right, when I went by it, the 3 buses from the daycare were all in their parking lot, so they weren't out on the street. So they don't park the buses on the street, but obviously the buses go up and down the streets when they're coming and going.
Since you brought Wynn Street up, when we are talking about the buses that are impacted by our daycare, you may want to consider west of Wynn Street, no parking on the north side of the street.
It's something we have to address, I just don't know, and again...
There's a couple of avenues we could take on this, and I agree with you.
And if it's like limited, as far as hours, like, I mean, I don't even know, do they run that day school during the summertime? I'm not sure. Or does it shut down? I mean, can we do it, again, when school hours are in operation, something like that?
You know, I have to tell you that I agree with you that it does warrant more exploration,
Okay.
and I will look into that.
I appreciate that. And again, we did get the request from the school, and it's a valid request that they said, people breaking off their mirrors, people are doing this and everything. But
Right.
again, I would like to know how many employees they have and where are their employees parking. I would say all their employees are parking on Monroe Avenue. So
Right.
they're going to have a headache themselves. Well, now you got to walk 3 blocks. So
I would say, and I've looked at that location multiple times since this came up, I would say that you're 100% right, that down by the preschool, there is an issue. It is a drop-off and a pickup of students like we have in all of the schools. And we do have an issue in all of the schools with public safety because of the drop-off and pickup. The problem is exacerbated by the narrow street. We do have, when you talk about the swim club, the swim teams, they drop them off with buses, which is also another challenging event. It's not all year and it's not all day long. And then again, I actually feel a little embarrassed because I should have checked with Doug Eagles and the Boys Club to find out how they felt about it, how it impacts on them. So given what you said here, it gives me a little bit of impetus to get back on the track, get over there and personally check it out with those locations.
okay, and just do me a favor. And I think you're right. I think every house I drove by, first I came east, then I did an illegal U-turn and went west, and trying to see if every house had a driveway. And it did look like a majority, if not all, definitely have driveways where we wouldn't be like making it even worse.
I'll look at it again. I believe they all have off-street parking, whether they're legitimate driveways, legitimate,
Right. So-
I'm not sure either, but I will look at it again.
But I think you're correct on that one. Okay. Thank you, Tony.
Yes. The final one is a request to have a handicap parking space at 1701 Ocean Avenue. And as you know, that's our largest senior center, the senior citizen building that we have in the city. It has adequate, lawful, off-street handicap parking spaces that meet the minimum requirement. That being said, there's a lot of guests that come to 1701 Ocean Avenue, and there is a request for additional spaces. In looking at the situation and given the type of layout of the parking that's available on the street, it's our recommendation to increase by adding a parking space on Kingsley Street, 164 feet south of the intersection of Deer Lake Drive, and the parking space would be 1421.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Well needed, and thank you for looking into it.
Next time.
Next issue on your agenda is the Codification Committee by Pam Lamberton and Nancy Haydock, from Coded Systems.
well, I can initiate the discussion about this. With us this evening, we have Nancy Haydock of Coded Systems LLC from Spring Lake Heights, representative of the codification company working for the city of Asbury Park, as well as Pamela Lamberton, city resident and the former chair of the Charter Study Commission. As you know, the city of Asbury Park now operates under a form of government that's prescribed by the Faulkner Act, as approved by the voters in November of 2013, the council manager form. The Faulkner Act requires that following the organization of the new form of municipal government, the municipal governing body shall adopt by ordinance an administrative code organizing the administration of the municipal government, setting forth the duties, responsibilities, and powers of all municipal officers, departments, and agencies, and establishing the manner of performance thereof. The Faulkner Act allows the municipal governing body to adopt an interim resolution, which you did on January 1st, to basically adopt the code on a provisional basis until such time as you're ready to formally adopt by ordinance, which is a requirement by law. Since January 1st, an informal, if you will, codification committee consisting of Deputy Mayor Quinn, myself, Ms. Haydock, and Ms. Lamberton have been working on updating the code. And this actually was very good timing because the city had already been involved in the recodification process, regardless of the change in the form of government, with Ms. Haydock's office updating the city code, because as you may know, the prior version of the code hadn't been updated since the year 2000. And now we have the temporary code online, and once we formally adopt the new city code by ordinance, the updated code, along with the table of contents, which will be easily navigable by the public, will be online and will now be finally in the 21st century with the rest of the municipal governments in New Jersey. So Ms. Haydock's office had already been working on codifying those ordinances that had been adopted since 2000, and what we did is we also reviewed the existing provisions that had been adopted, either in the old Blue Book Code or those that had been adopted since 2000, in order to ensure that what you have is consistent with the current state of the law, eliminate redundancies, try to make it more user-friendly, and put together a draft that we could present to you to adopt by ordinance. As you can imagine, the city code, since it covers chapters 1 through 30, which is land use, to completely redo that from top to bottom is a huge undertaking. And what we primarily focused our attention on during this period of time since January 1st was chapters 1 and 2, which deal with administration, because those are the provisions set forth in the Faulkner Act, which you have to adopt and update in order to conform to your new form of government. So now we are in a position to recommend to you that you adopt the new code by ordinance, and we're happy to present this now to you for your consideration. We would like to indicate that our work will be continuing. There are additional revisions that will be required to chapters beyond Chapter 2, but given the fact that we are at a point where, under the Faulkner Act, we really do need to have the code adopted by ordinance, we're ready to recommend that you adopt it now, and we have an ordinance prepared by Ms. Haydock's office that was in your packets or is ready for your consideration to introduce tomorrow evening. So with that, I'll turn it over if either Pam or Nancy has anything further to add. They've been working very hard on this for Asbury Park, and I thank them both.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Thank you for having us tonight. And I just want to say, for a volunteer, we work with municipalities all over the country, and I have never seen a volunteer like this. I really haven't. And Pam just went out and gathered all of the information which creates the framework for the organizational chart of what is the city of Asbury Park, because that is how you are operating, so it can be formalized and adopted by the governing body. So I have to say thank you to Pam, because she really did a tremendous job. The code, once the city code is adopted, like Fred said, it's Mr. Fred said, it's a living document. It's always, the minute we adopt a new code with any municipality, it starts changing. It's always going to be amended and updated, and it will be kept current to the statutes. our online service to you provides not just the city code online, but it gives you fully a search engine within the city code. You'll be able to post ordinances as soon as they're adopted in a pending file, so that if you were to search dog licenses, your chapter on dog licensing will come up along with the pending ordinance, so you can see the change. And we've discussed they will go up within about a 20-day period, which is about the time for the effective date anyway. Full public access, and it's now current, this code, which I will be leaving with your new city clerk, is on file in her office during the introduction process. Cindy also has some CDs. You can get a copy of that. People can go in and expect the written copy. And if you have any questions for me after tonight, when I leave, you can go, through Cindy. I'll be happy to, walk you through any changes and/or, the basics of what was in here and how Mr. Raffetto and Pam and Amy and I worked on it.
And I believe that the ordinance is now, once adopted, will be updated through April 22nd, 2015.
Right. This copy is current to April 22nd, ordinance number 10, 2015, which is as current as we can make it. It's effective.
So what we're giving you tonight then is a new Chapter 1, which is kind of the introduction to the code, and a new Chapter 2, which is the basic organization of the city government, paid employees, volunteers, everything that actually makes the city work. The subsequent chapters, 3 through 30, and a lot of them are reserved, so a lot of them don't have any content, but the rest of those chapters are almost complete. The response from city employees has been fantastic when they've all come up and met with us and given us information that we can use to rewrite the sections that apply to their departments. They've really been fantastic. Tony was instrumental in coordinating all that. So what we're asking you in this ordinance is to approve what's in this box, which is a brand new Chapter 1 and a brand new Chapter 2, and the existing chapters 3 through 30 that you adopted in January. But we are almost ready to give you the brand new Chapter 3, 4, 5, 6 through 30. There are some exceptions. Chapter 30 is the land use. That's a whole other story. And I can answer specific questions about those subsequent chapters. I'm also prepared to answer questions about Chapters 1 and 2 if you want, or if you just want to go at this point and look at, Nancy, you said you could have something online so they could look at this box online?
Yes. You can look at paper. Cindy has CDs, which are a PDF format. And when, like, your Chapter 2 now has a table of contents with it, and the reason that you and the initial copies don't have it is because it keeps changing. So every time we generate it changes, but now you have that. If you want it online now, we can put the proposed code online as the proposed code. That's up to the mayor and council. It could go up there as a pending adoption with your ordinance.
Okay, yes, I have, unfortunately, quite a few questions. Because somebody told me I had to read this, so I read it. And
Part of it is Pam, Fred, and I, and Nancy as well. We've looked at this code so many times that the idea of looking at it again is horrifying. But so the only reason I'm saying is that I think you should read it is a fresh set of eyes will be helpful from what we've been doing for months.
Okay.
And before we get into those questions, I just have a general question about the public and when it's online. Do you guys also have like an app for a phone where people can access the code that way?
No, it is accessible by your phone. I use my iPhone for it, and I use Google Chrome.
Oh,
and
just
then I
do what?
just access it that way, and it's.
The interesting thing about their website also is that there are other cities' administrative codes on their website. So if you really want to get into it, you can look and see what other cities, what their dog ordinance is compared to what Asbury Park is, which is what we have been doing.
Right. I think it's important to remember that this code represents the city's ordinances as compiled and codified. The changes are reflected are from the new form of government that came about January 1st. So if we did not have the code, all the city's ordinances would still compile this information, but just as individual ordinances and not in a topical chapter basis. The Chapter 2, like Pam spoke about, was, the gathering of what actually does exist in the city, that's changed over time that hasn't been reflected in the administrative chapter.
Okay, and I made a lot of little notation. I'm going to skip my notations, and we'll come back to those, but I have some specific questions. I'll refer to pages.
Sure.
And everybody's working on the same document?
You're in the city code from the PDFs, correct?
I don't know. Whatever you sent me, I'm on.
Yes, okay. Yeah, pretty much. If you even use a subsection number of where you're at, Pam and I will...
I'll go to the page, and then I'll mention the second section. Page 15.
Are you in Chapter 2?
Correct, yeah. I had no problem with Chapter 1 whatsoever.
Okay.
But let me just start off by saying, again, I totally agree with you about Pam. Amy, thank you so much for doing this. Huge job. Hell, the rest of you getting paid, so I'm not thanking you. But great job. And there's a lot of things I love in this that I never knew were in this before, because I don't think past mayor and council knew they were in this before, as far as like, we're supposed to get quarterly reports just about from anybody. And whoever we weren't supposed to get them for, you added, which I love. So while we're on quarterly reports and everything, and I don't even know where this would fall in, because this, I made a notation with after I was done reading it. So it's going to go someplace under finance, which I asked in past years.
Well, you're losing me on your question. So we're on page 15.
No. Okay, this is going to be a general question, then you guys can figure out where it goes under finance. Okay. And then we'll go back to page 15. Under finance, and the finance CMFO, I asked like a year and a half ago, could we get a quarterly report from the CMFO as far as money requested by departments and money spent quarterly? So, because 2 years ago, we found out in September, 2 departments had overspent their budgets by 300%. So if we got a quarterly report, so if that could be added in here, because I don't think that's in here. So if that could be added, I mean, that would be appreciative. And maybe it is in here, because there are so many.
No, there's nothing that specific. I will talk to Mr. Gartz and ask him what kind of format that could take. So you're looking for expenses against their budgets, or?
Right. At the beginning of the year, we say DPW is budgeted for $1 million. So then at the first quarter, we get like how much they spent, and the percentage, the second quarter, how much they spent, the percentage, and the third quarter, how much they spent. Now, if they spent $1.5 million, they're $500,000 over budget, we know we have a problem. And that happened to us 2 years ago, where 2 departments were grossly over their expenditures as they requested. And by the time we found out about it, it was too late to fix. So we got those quarterly reports from each department from CMFO.
You just want to make sure they're all on track.
Correct.
So the only thing I would say to that, Fred, is that, and I don't know, I think it's a good request. I'm not saying anything bad about the request, but that seems to be really, really specific. What we put in there were anyone who didn't have to give us a quarterly report, we added, and then left that somewhat discretionary to what exactly was in it, although I assume it would be expensive, overtures, all of that kind of stuff. So I don't know if we should come up with a criteria for what is included in these quarterly reports as a general overall we want quarterly reports that list this, than just putting in the, it seems a little specific to put in the code, the CFO has to do this specifically. Maybe we should brainstorm,
Goals and accomplishments.
yeah,
Okay.
criteria for all the quarterly reports, which would really require Tony's input as well.
Okay, they say it kicked in at the end when I was done reading everything. It's like, wait a second, this happened 2 years ago. I don't see a stop measure in here, which I have no problem. We can adopt a simple, like, policy. Mr. Gartz, give us a quarterly report, doesn't have to be part of the code.
Well, there is a provision, as Pam indicated, that under the duties of the CMFO, CMFO is to provide the city manager with quarterly reports and goals and accomplishments. So under the city manager can direct the CMFO to include such information in the quarterly reports as the city manager deems appropriate and necessary. Or we could work something more specific in here, but we do have a provision already in here about quarterly reports for the CMFO.
Okay. Okay, we'll go back to page
We were
15.
trying to err on the less government, less control side, but still give you the tools that you need to make sure the city is still going where you want it to go. I kind of agree with Fred, it sounds like this would be a city up to the city manager. Because you're going to say that the city manager,
Where's my report?
this is, and this is, right, yeah, right.
I've been saying that for 2 years. Okay.
Well, now you have a code to refer to.
Okay. Okay, we'll go back to page 15, I'm sorry.
Okay.
2-7.5.
This is yours, Fred.
I don't think that to be the truth.
You don't think what?
That to be the truth.
What about that in particular, Mayor?
Because we had that, it went to court and they said it's a conflict. And it's always going to be a conflict, so why would we re-adopt something that's a conflict and gets thrown out of court?
Well, that was because the individual who was serving as the code enforcement prosecutor had a conflict. That wouldn't prevent the city from appointing someone else to serve in this capacity. Previously, the prosecutions had been separated into two responsibilities. You had the regular prosecutor, who's James Butler, and then you had the code enforcement prosecutor, who was previously Pat Mena. And then our director of property improvement, neighborhood preservation was going to take those responsibilities over, and there was a conflict of interest. We kept the position in there. You can always decide to get rid of that, but we still have a position in case the city manager were to appoint someone to serve in that capacity.
To me, it wasn't a conflict because of the person, it was a conflict of the job description, where I'm in charge of code and I'm the prosecutor. This is my code director, I'm going to go against my code person, my code inspector, and that's where they said it was a conflict.
So that person-
Forget the relationship.
That person shouldn't also be serving as the code enforcement prosecutor.
That's what I was told, that it's going to be thrown out.
Serving in that
It's
capacity.
always going to be thrown out because there's a conflict of interest. You're in charge of the department, you're defending your department, and you're not like a credible witness or a credible, and again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but okay.
But this does not mandate that it must be the director of property improvement and neighborhood preservation. It just provides for the
A
position.
position of a code enforcement prosecutor. It doesn't have to be, say Tony's the code enforcement prosecutor, it doesn't have to be Tony, but we need a code enforcement prosecutor.
Unless our regular prosecutor is going to be handling that, which is what's happening.
Which has always happened and continues to happen.
Well, previously there was someone appointed to that position. There was a separate individual, Mr. Mena, who was serving as the code enforcement prosecutor. I believe it was because the number of, the volume of issues were such that our regular prosecutor wasn't able to be there both days when the municipal court was meeting, and we needed to have someone specifically devoting their attention to that. But that is at the discretion of the mayor and council. You don't have to keep that position.
Yeah, they felt that they needed to establish one separate session just for code violations.
Right.
Okay, page 26, this is a curiosity question,
Can you give the section number?
2-9.13, this is a curiosity question. It's fees for emergencies, EMS. When was the last time that was updated?
We just did it.
This today.
It was just updated in the last month.
Oh, okay, so we increased the fees?
I don't have my notes on this, but this was addressed, and they were given the opportunity, particularly in the administrative, the fire official, the building is all, and construction is all new. I could get back to you on it, but I do know that it was addressed, and find out exactly when it was changed.
Okay, let's go to page 28, if I can find it. Page 28 is the carryover from 2-10.1. As far as the rates for police officers and EMT fire officers,
They were just updated also.
I believe they're incorrect. They're both paid the same. And we confirmed that today at the special events meeting. They both get the same hourly rate, but here it shows a different hourly rate, one for police and one for...
You did ask.
That was,
So
okay.
that can be corrected. That's okay, that we can correct that.
You know what it's supposed to be? I got, these figures came from Teddy.
I believe that they should be the higher rates for both.
So, police,
I believe, but we had a special events committee
Well, Kevin's right
today.
here, just ask him. Kevin, what's the rate for special duty assignment per hour, 75 or 85?
It's, it was my understanding that it was, it's 65
65.
total before midnight, and 75 after midnight.
All right, well, where's,
You get that $12 an
well,
hour.
that's what they have. Is Tony still here? Just so we can take care of this now. Is Salerno still here or no? We left?
Whatever we gave was from the current ordinance. We didn't increase that. And usually when that is increased, though, it's increased across the board.
All right, so maybe police are wrong.
Well, I asked at the special events committee today with the police there, and they said, no, we get the same as fire.
So if they had the same, somebody's wrong.
Yeah. Well, again, they can be corrected.
here's the ordinance where you fix it right here in front of you. And then when it's adopted, it'll be whatever this says, so. you need to
But
decide
my
what
problem,
to be.
Pam, and bear with me, I'm always Mr. Frugal and everything. If we adopt this and it's wrong, then do we have to pay somebody else to correct the mistake? So I'd rather adopt it correct.
We're just introducing tomorrow night, so we've got two weeks to make it right.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Then I can then would you rather me instead of doing this, forward you all my questions and make it go a lot easier? And I'm all for that too. I mean, I want to go home also, but I mean...
And also know that we are recommending that this be adopted by ordinance because we're under a time requirement and we have to adopt it by ordinance because of the Faulkner Act provisions that say that you must adopt the administrative code within a specified period of time after you organize. We are going to be moving forward with the additional chapters, so anything else that needs to be tweaked still in chapters 1 and 2 can be brought forward as we move forward with the other chapters. So it's going to be a continued process.
Okay, so if it's easier for me to just, and I read this a little bit this morning and a lot this afternoon, so if it's easier for me just to write down my questions and forward to you guys, I didn't know we had 2 weeks to correct it, so that's fine with me.
I didn't mean to correct it, I meant just for those
For
figures.
purposes of this ordinance, we really only have to prove tomorrow night when you would theoretically be introducing it. Unless you want to put...
Even if it's not a substantial change, like if it's a $10 difference?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't affect this substance, if it doesn't substantially affect the substance, you can, as always, make a revision after introduction.
All right, so if we don't know whether it's going to substantially affect it, you should go through your list. I mean, listen, I don't want you to go through your list either, but I'd rather you go through your list just in case. Because I don't know if it's going to be, like, $10 to me is not, I think we could successfully argue that it's not a substantial change, the 65, 75, or 85, but your other stuff might be, so.
I'll
Go ahead.
be quick. Okay, page 31, and this is 2-15. And this is consistent through the document. What does reserve mean?
It's a chapter that has no content now, but we can use it in the future. And if they're spaced sporadically through the document so that you can, when you need to add something, it can be put in a more meaningful position in the code. That's the only reason that it's the way it is.
Page 32, 2-16.4. C.
Because you didn't correct it.
be the project officer for the Clean Communities Program.
I'm sorry.
I'm page 32, 2-16-4, and little c,
Okay.
be the project officer for the Clean Communities Program. We just appointed a Clean Communities person, and it's not the Department of DPW.
This is a recreation of the Department of Public Works, and a lot of this came out of the Blue Book.
You tell me what to do.
What?
No, I was talking to Joe.
You want
Sorry.
to shut it down?
No.
I can get that out by tomorrow.
Separate question.
That can come out for tomorrow.
Strike that?
That what?
I can take that out for tomorrow and
Yeah, because at the last
For intro.
meeting, last Thursday, I went to the New Jersey State, it was a 3-day seminar in Long Branch, Clean Communities, and Yvonne Adams was there as the Clean Communities Coordinator representing Asbury Park, and so it's obviously not the Director of DPW, it's Yvonne Adams.
We can take care of that before tomorrow night. And just so you know, previously, the Departments of Engineering and Public Works had been together, and we have, with the new administrative code, separated them once again.
What we would do with something like that is take that, be the project officer for Clean Communities, out of the section under Assistant Superintendent, and add it under the duties of the superintendent as supervise the project officer for Clean Communities.
He or she or the person they direct. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. But I just didn't want strict language in there where,
No, and part of the reason that I'm glad you read this is because we would have no idea about the Clean Communities Coordinator. I mean, the three of us, right?
okay.
Perfect.
Page 39. 2-19.3. And this is, I guess, more a question for
23?
page 39, 2-19.3.
Point 3. Thank you.
Organization additional staff.
In the Department of Recreation, okay?
Right. Who's the one program specialist? And I guess that's a question for Tony, because we don't have that position. So there's no such position, so why is it listed?
No, the individual in there is a program development aide, and she serves as the director.
But it's the same
Like it
person.
says the
The same
department
person.
may include, so it doesn't require. It says the department may include, but shall not necessarily be limited to the following additional personnel, so it's not a mandatory.
Okay.
However, we can always remove it.
No,
I would rather leave more in so we don't have to, so we can add, do you know what I'm saying? Than have it be
it's not required.
so restrictive that in order to hire a specialist, a program specialist, we now have to amend the code and go through
You sold.
a month of that, yeah.
So, page 40.
We have different page numbers.
It's the way it's per section. They're all different.
I'm sorry, page
The
40,
section number might be easier.
2-20.2.
Okay?
Number 2. Since we just heard that we're going to dissolve UEZ, shouldn't we dissolve it out of this also?
Is that paragraph D2?
D2.
Is that in D2?
Or do you want to keep it in case we ever bring UEZ back? I mean,
I don't have an opinion on it one way or the other.
Yeah, well, we didn't know that.
I know you didn't. I didn't know it until we got the agenda on Friday either, so. But since I read this today and saw
Well,
that,
what you're voting on to dissolve is just the incorporated function of half of the UEZ. You still have the other half of the UEZ where city businesses can register with the state to achieve certain benefits, and you might still want to have somebody in the city who's in that loop.
Can we modify it to just say coordinate activities with the Asbury Park Urban Enterprise Zone, period, and that's it? And this way they would coordinate anybody who qualifies? And
fine. And a follow-up with that, if you go to page 42, 2-20.4, B1 is basically the same thing where you may want to modify that also.
Okay.
We're skipping a ton of pages. Page 51. And I'm going to figure out... Okay, I have no problem with that.
Section?
Oh, I'm sorry, 2-36.10, saying any committee that meets, be it recreation, be it everything, has to keep minutes and give them to the city clerk. Is that, I mean, I think it's good, but
It's correct.
is it going to happen? If it
It's the
doesn't,
law.
it's the law. Okay, so every time Environmental Shade Tree Commission meets, you guys got to keep minutes?
Oh my God, Garrett's religious
Garrett does
about
it.
our meeting.
Oh, okay.
That meeting we don't have to worry about. There's other ones we might need to worry about.
Yeah.
The Open Public Meetings Act doesn't require advisory.
Right, advisory committees, we don't have to do
Advisory
it,
committees don't have to.
which is
but-
parking, but recreation would not be advisory.
Right.
Is it?
Committees created by ordinance.
And, okay, so by ordinance, not by resolution.
Right, so parking's resolution.
And
Parking, school,
what is recreation?
It's in the code, it's ordinance.
So it's ordinance, so we need a secretary there. Because I'm,
Is it a advisory committee, though?
Recreation, no.
The commission, that's the new commission.
How about the director here? Why we need a secretary if Felicia's taking notes?
well, she can be the secretary, for sure.
But
She just
somebody
needs
has to
to
take
forward them on
notes.
to
Yeah.
the city clerk as well.
Somebody has to just give them to the
That's
city.
what I told her before. Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, your new one.
So another one would be Sunset Bridge Committee. They don't have to take notes, right? We did that by resolution.
Page 55, I had a question about can't even understand it, so we'll go to page 62.
So the only thing I had, and just to refresh my memory because I forgot, on page 52, 3-38, we had to keep the brownfield development because it's in the WRA, right? I thought that was going to be one of your questions.
Yeah, it's two.
Yeah, there's some requirement for us to have the Springwood Avenue Brownfield Development Area Steering Committee as per, I believe, our 2002.
And it was created by ordinance, so it is.
And it was created by ordinance. I'm not sure who's on it or if it exists, but we're required to have it.
I happen to have all that information. Don's having gave me copies of it. It was being confused with the Springwood
Yeah.
Avenue Redevelopment Committee.
Well, it was housed within there, was it not?
It wasn't, it's totally separate.
Two separate?
Two separate committees. And Jesse, I think you're on both.
Page 62, 2.47.4, this is dealing with the Sunset Lake Commission that hasn't met.
I know, we didn't know what to do with this, I'll be honest with you.
To may create.
Yeah, we didn't know what to do, because I know they haven't met. It needs one, it needs an advocate, Sunset Lake, dear God, it needs one.
Yeah, but, okay, and I have no problem with that, and I used to be on it, haven't been on it 10 years, but if we go to 2.47.4B5, I'm just using that for example. To provide and regulate the dredging of the lake and to enter into any and all agreements to carry out the dredging of the lake. Doesn't say they need council permission, so this commission can just go out and say, we're going to dredge the lake for $3 million, and the city has no power to say no, which I don't want that. I've never seen that type of, like,
Well, the Wesley Lake Commission functions that way, Deal Lake Commission functions that way.
no, they have to come to us and ask us for money.
Right, they come and ask you for money,
And
and you,
if we say no, the way I read this, they could just say, we're going to do it anyway.
oh, and incur the debt without your approval.
Right.
We can amend that, at this time, and I can have it for you for tomorrow.
Well, any place that's in there, giving any commission the right to spend money without,
Subject to the budgetary constraints,
or
provided by the mayor and council.
subject to coming before mayor and council, not budgetary restraints,
You
because
set
that could be
aside
bonded.
Line items for various bodies, and they have to stay within their budget.
And their budget right now is zero.
Well, then they
Well, the
can't
first
do
thing-
anything.
You don't really
Okay,
have
okay, but the way it reads right now, they could go out and get a dredging contract for $3 million and dredge Sunset Lake, and the city's on the hook to bond the money.
Well, the only thing I'm going to say from a practical point of view to that is the Sunset Lake Commission can't draw up a contract and sign a contract to dredge that lake without the city's approval. I mean, the city could,
Where does that say that under Sunset Lake codification? It doesn't say that.
okay.
Sunset Lake is the only lake that's completely controlled by Asbury Park. So it's different than the other two.
I don't care. If you want to add that language, that's fine.
While we're on lakes, so the Wesley Lake Commission is redoing their bylaws, and I think there may be some changes that if we're redoing this, we might as well coordinate with them. I think Jim Henry's been in charge of that.
Incorporate that as soon as it's,
Right.
as soon as it's done.
It's, Jim, we're pretty much there, right? Just a couple tweaks?
Today, Tiffany from Neptune Township is preparing the document to be submitted to Mayor and Council here at Asbury Park and to the City Council and Mayor in Neptune for your review and approval. So by the next meeting, you should have that document with the modifications that we're recommending for the Wesley Lake Commission.
Just because I know one piece of the membership is changing. It's minor tweaks to the membership. There's going to be 2 residents, I think, appointed by mayor council instead of an alternate.
That won't affect you.
I think that's it. But the other, it may be more. There may be more to it. So
Page 74, 2-5811. I like that. I'm just curious, why is that not in every 258.11 non-discrimination policy? Why don't we include that in everything? It's just in APTV that will not discriminate on the basis of gender, sexual orientation, race, color, national or ethnic origin, which I like. I think that should be in the entire code. It's just my humble
Take
opinion.
that out and put it in the front and
Right,
say.
in the beginning.
All of these, yeah.
That one, yeah.
I like that.
Okay, thank you.
And just so you know, what we did is we utilized, Pam did some research about the other municipalities that had cable television advisory committees, and I believe it was Wayne that we.
Right, and then
John Frederickson wrote this, right?
APTV Commission. So that's very good, John, I like that.
Okay. Hey, out of 82 pages, I had to get one right. On page 82, 2-63.5, do we have such a position, or is this in case we do get that
This
position?
was our question as well.
Okay,
This is on the city council to-do list.
Okay.
We need to talk about that.
I emailed it out, which I'm sure got mixed up with a whole bunch of things, but we can decide.
No,
We
I'm
got to
not-
decide on that.
Okay.
Because I didn't know if we want that or not.
It's the whole section, John, 263.
yeah. I know.
That's a policy call.
Page 87, and I don't even want to go, it's very good, it's very confusing, and Fred, if I...
One second.
It's pay for play.
2-72.2.
And it's just... I have no-
2-76.2.
I have no questions. It's just like, I get confused about it, and I ask Fred, what do these 15 pages mean?
The public contracting reform, commonly known as pay-to-play ordinance, basically, several years ago, the city adopted the Jersey City model because the requirement, the memorandum of understanding with the state of New Jersey for transitional aid funding. One of the specific provisions in the MOU says that transitional aid municipalities must have an ordinance that is as restrictive or more restrictive, at least as restrictive as the Jersey City model. And in order to ensure that we were compliant with the MOU, we basically a number of years ago, when we started getting transitional aid funding, took the Jersey City ordinance, which was a model ordinance that had been proposed to municipalities by the Center for Civic Responsibility Common Cause, into ordinance form and complied so that we had an ordinance that was as restrictive as Jersey City. I know they're confusing, the pay-to-play ordinances, but wanted to ensure that we were compliant with the state's requirements, and it does require you to, if you're going to run for office, make sure that you understand the ins and outs of this, because it imposes limitations and restrictions on what professional contractors who do business with the city can contribute, if at all, to candidates and costs in Asbury Park.
Okay. Page 98, 2-81, copying costs. Can we increase them? We have, and, no?
This is the statutory maximum that is allowed. The only place that you're allowed to charge a special fee is if you ask somebody to do extra services. As Mr. Raffetto and I spoke about today, the only thing we can do is have an hourly fee for, it would be copying. These are the maximum Oprah's allowable unless you can prove that your copier costs more than 5 cents to print an 8.5, 11-page. So this is the statutory. The other thing, if I just might interject, because this might help you understand as you're reviewing, at the end of each section, where we're at the Oprah right here at 2-81.1, at the end of your sections, you're going to either see an ordinance number, many ordinance numbers, a statutory citation, or the word new. Generally, in a new code, all the old ordinance numbers and the history goes out. But because Asbury's, the continuity of an actual code in hand is going to disappear with the production of this code, I left them in so you would have a source history to see, did this come from an ordinance we adopted? That number will give you a time frame of when it was adopted, and we can actually come up with a date. And/or does the statute, did it supersede it? And if it's new, it was just revised for the new code because it was challenged, superseded, unconstitutional, or it's a statutory mandate. So that can help you too of where the information in the entire code came from. Give you an idea.
Okay. So it leads to a follow-up question, which I just marked on page, whatever it is, 99. Like, we recently got an Oprah request from somebody asking every council member to send every email they got or sent to 5 different employees. And that's fine, except then the city attorney has to review them and see what he has to
redact.
Right. Now, that's very expensive. How do we recoup that cost?
And not only that, paper-wise and resource-wise. So Cindy or Melody, so when I hit search in my email to see how many emails I have to and from this person, you're at 700 or 800 emails that I have going back and forth to certain employees in the city. So if Cindy and Melody have to then copy all those emails, give them to Fred, then he's got to review them and say what is, some of which are confidential, nothing related to anything being requested, I assume. So if that's 700 pages and takes up Melody's time for 2 hours, can we recover that cost by what you're saying as additional cost?
Yes, under a special service charge.
Okay, then we should put a special service charge in.
And we can
Cover
do,
your costs, because you're going to have to review them. It's going to be a lot more than 2 hours, and you make more than Cindy and Melody. So it's going to be very expensive for any lawyer to go through 5 times 700 to see what has to be deleted because it's confidential.
right, and it could have 2 charges. It could be, you could actually break it down into subparagraphs of an administrative fee for somebody who is copying and doing archival retrieval, and then for legal review as required per the request, and then it's a different fee. You could have 2 fees. The statute just requires you to adopt by ordinance your special service charges, and if someone made the request, that Cindy would then inform them, this is going to incur special service charges, here's the fees that we have adopted by ordinance, so that they're aware of them ahead of time and give them a guesstimate. It's going to be about 20 hours, so it will cost you.
And to piggyback on what John's saying, so let's hypothetically, let's say we all search our emails, there's 500 emails. I'm making up a number. 5 times 5 is 25. So 2,500 pieces of paper are going to have to be printed out and reviewed. So whatever that cost is, and I don't know what that cost is, so it's 5 cents a page. And then Melanie and Cindy's cost, which is, let's say their cost ends up being $200. Are we making them give that to the city before they're getting these documents?
Or should they at least be informed by this code?
They have to be informed up front and then have the opportunity to say, thank you, but I'm not interested if it's going to cost me X. You have to give them an estimate up front, as Nancy indicated. We estimate, based on the volume, that it's going to be approximately X number of hours, and this is the rate, and giving them advance notice up front.
Okay.
And I certainly have no problem whatsoever requiring, let's say, a deposit of half up front, the remaining half when they get the documents, so as to ensure that, the city is paid in full.
Okay.
The last one I have, page 101, I'll leave it up to Joe and Jesse. 2.84 recreation fees, did we really do that?
Which question again?
Page 101, 2-84.1. I put a question mark, did we do it? I guess the paragraph B.
So did you adopt the fee schedule is the question.
There are some fee schedules referenced in here that need to be adopted if they haven't already been adopted.
Okay.
Similarly, in 2-82.2, there's a reference to the city adopting a fee schedule and rates by resolution of the council related to hourly billing rates for city employees for capital.
The only thing I have to say is, again, all four of you, I appreciate the time, the effort, and the hard work you put into doing this, and deeply appreciate it. Thank you.
So, and the only thing I'm going to follow up on kind of what Pam said, which was, you all got an email, and I'll definitely resend it. I have all people know how many emails we get in our email a day, saying policy calls by the council, and the Sunset Commission is a perfect example of that, but there's a number of committees, Springwood Ave Advisory, that we need to decide if we want to get rid of, or you want to keep in the code as the possibility of bringing back. So I will re-forward that out and then either get back to me, or, I mean, I guess we could discuss it publicly at our one of our meetings, but you gotta.
And on page 6, and 2-3.9, page 8, section C, the 2-3.4. We're talking about appointing and removing a deputy city manager. And then there's another, and we're going to create an office of an assistant city manager. Are these one and the same, or a new position? What?
Well, the city has an existing position of assistant city manager. We didn't remove that. We left that the same. And the form of government that we have, the council manager form of government, provides that the city may appoint a deputy city manager. But until matters involving our existing assistant city manager, who still has rights to the position under civil service, get resolved, we felt it best not to remove that position, even though there's no one acting in that capacity at the current time. It may be removed at some point in the future, depending upon what happens with that position. But at this point, we felt it prudent to leave that in there, even though it may appear that there's duplicative responsibilities between the two positions. Given the uncertainty that exists right now with the existing position, we didn't want to touch that right now until that matter gets resolved.
Thank you.
As Amy pointed out, there are some issues for the council to consider, things that have come up over the course of time. I'm just going to real quickly say them so that they're in the back of your minds. One is bicycles. We need to talk about that, and we're going to need a policy call from the council on that sometime in the future, in the near future. But wheeled vehicles, if I can call them that, skateboards, bikes, are covered in 2 sections in the code, 2 separate sections, and they both seem to be overkill. Noise ordinances have to come up again. Are we where we want to be with noise ordinances? The TRC, which is a committee that reviews for the council redevelopment proposals on the waterfront. We still haven't determined whether or not it's actually required by CAFRA.
I did determine it was required by CAFRA.
It is required. Okay, then we should talk about can the process be made better than it is?
Yeah, the process should be better, but getting rid of it's a monster.
Good, thank you. Clothing donation bins.
Agreed, but it's
Do we
just a
have
monster.
ordinance, or are we covered the way we want to be covered with them? And also pods, you know, the moving vehicles that people park in the streets. Curfews. I would love you all to take a look at the curfew section in, I believe it's in police regulations, and see if that, because that's a council policy call. Like, what do you want the curfews to be in the city? And maybe it's just exactly the way you want it. The minority business enterprise, a lighting ordinance, that really is going to fall into the land use chapter, but we don't have one now, so we're going to talk about whether or not we want to have one in the future. An emissions statement for the council. This is something personal of mine, not required, but I would like to see the council have a mission statement. And yes, other cities have them. They use them as introductions to the city code, not actually part of the city code, but it's also something you would put on the website, because why do we have a city council? What do you do for the city? Why are you up there? What is your mission? Why do we elect you? And I humbly suggest that perhaps Councilwoman Clayton would, if you all agree that that's a good idea, to take on that task. I think with her corporate experience where that kind of thing is prevalent.
Done. I nominate
Excuse me, I have one that I haven't heard yet.
Okay.
A dress code. I'm tired of seeing people running around with their pants below their waist.
I bet there's...
Is it possible that we can come up with something in that nature?
In the city?
Yes.
Cape May did it 2 years ago.
I thought it was Wildwood. Was it Cape May?
It's Wildwood. They did it, and, the problem is, do they enforce it? It's the discretion of the police officer, but it certainly did raise a lot of eyebrows, and I do believe we still have it in their code. I don't believe that it's enforced very often, but you know what I mean? But, so, I could send you the ordinance
Okay, can we
and what they
adopt
did in Wildwood and see.
Will it be a problem with adopting?
Why don't we circulate to you a copy of one from another town, and we'll give it some thought as to whether it's something that you feel would be appropriate for Asbury.
Yeah.
And we'd also
I
have
think
to
I already
the
have-
legalities of it, because I remember when that was going.
It was
It was
front page news.
Yeah.
It was very
And
controversial.
I mean, off the top of my head, I can think of legalities with it.
Right.
Just in terms of like freedom of speech, things like that. But yeah, no, if we could get a copy. Also, we have a list of, Pam, my recollection, is we have a list of committees or commissions that are essentially defunct now that we need to decide if you want to keep or get rid of them. Or did we go through that?
I think we took care of it.
We did take care of it.
And
Okay.
what's reflected, and it'll be really easy to see on the index pages. They are listed now together in hopefully a meaningful way in.
Oh, we did go through that whole list. There wasn't anything left?
We did go through
Okay,
that whole list.
I don't remember.
Okay, because there's another one.
Okay.
I know a few states that have this, begging for money. I was sitting, give you an example, I was on the beach, and there were so many people that I knew from New York and other states coming up, and people just asking them for money. And I know there is states that it's a law that if you're begging for money or harassing people for money, then there's a penalty.
That's something that I would want to review with the police department, but I certainly will, discuss it with the deputy chief.
We do have a current ordinance.
For panhandling, isn't it?
But it's not going to be panhandling, it'll be,
It's not in chapter 1 or 2, but.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Pam.
ladies.
Before I leave, I just want to clarify with the mayor and council. And Mr. Mayor, I thank you for reading every word, because it's a lot of work to read and reread and understand and try to figure out how it's going to work with the city. I would like to see you go forward and me put these changes in for you for tomorrow night so you can legally adopt your code. It is what you're going by now. And as Mr. Raffetto and Pam spoke of, it is a work in progress since the new form of government. But certainly, this is the way to go to get it up online, adopted, enforced. Everybody's on the same page and will be reading it, and then it can be discussed, and everybody will know exactly where we're at. Right now, we're kind of working out of a box and a CD, and it's difficult, and I really do appreciate people taking the time to work on it, because it's a lot of, are we going on that track? I will put all of your changes in for tomorrow and get them to the city clerk for presentation. Does anybody else? We can even look into that second fee. That's the only one that we kind of had up in the air for the police.
And we just need to clarify the hour between the police and fire, that is it 65, 75, or 85? And then I absolutely want to add a fee about services that are, however you want to word it, I'd have to think about how to word it, but you would know off the top of your head.
Right. So by the time you look at this tomorrow, you will actually have a new Chapter 2, which will have all of the changes that were discussed tonight, or if anyone else, has something they want to bring up with Mr. Raffetto tomorrow, and as long as you give me an hour before the meeting, I will get it in and get it to the city clerk by tomorrow night, so that it is what you want for practical purposes for the introduction of the ordinance.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
As we indicated, we always have the ability to continue to modify the existing document and keep moving forward with the rest of the chapters anyway, so it's something now we can certainly incorporate it at a later date. So.
And that's why if I suggested something like you're not 100% sure on, just don't throw it in there, think about it and say, John, we're not sure, we may add this down the road. So anything you for or not totally in agreement with does not mean it should be added. And like Fred said, it can be added down the road.
He doesn't know us very well, does he?
He what?
I said, you don't know us very well.
Okay.
I'm teasing, because it is a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth. The legal end from the municipal codifier's end, your advocate for Asbury Park, Amy with her, well, what about this aspect? So you really have a great product, and it really is what you have. I just hate to see it linger out there so long, and we never get it online and in your hands in any way that your judge, your police officers, the public can access it. When it is a living document, it will always change.
Just whatever you give Cindy, just red line so we see the changes.
Oh, sure, we can do that. Yeah.
So the only thing, Fred, I was going to bring it up during the discussion, is I want to discuss with the council implementing an absentee policy for the boards and commissions. For just the big ones mainly, we can talk about I know the Shade Tree, I think has its own. But, zoning board, planning board, I think I have no problem with us being subject to it. Would that be something that we put in the code, or?
The statute has it. We don't.
There's a state statute that prescribes that.
Yeah.
We could incorporate that into the code, but it already is set forth by state statute.
Right.
So when I asked the zoning board, because the zoning board is telling me that they have members not showing up or alternates not showing up. So I have two questions. One, if you're an alternate, are you required to show up? And two, is there an absentee policy currently for planning, zoning, or city council? Not that, I don't think any of us have missed a meeting yet, so I'm not, but the point is we should have a uniform policy for major boards, including city council. So do we have one for planning and zoning?
There are statutory requirements for all of the commissions and committees and mayor and council, absentee-wise. You can change it under the statute. You can modify it a little. I think I've only seen one municipality ever do it. They usually go by what's in the statute. I can certainly provide it to you for your meeting tomorrow night.
The statute, perfect.
And then you can also have it in.
And it would be for the three major boards, zoning, planning, council.
You'll see, it basically covers all of the bodies of the city.
Oh, wow. That would be fabulous. Thank you very much.
I thank everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This evening, you have one item for discussion. All right, that would be the 2015 beach menu items. All right, we have Carrie Turner from Madison Marquette and Garrett Diverson, all right, our beachfront coordinator.
Give some handouts. Thank you, Mike.
We have.
John, you have?
Yeah, I think Cindy gave it to us.
Yeah, I need that. Anybody have?
Yep. I have two.
You have two.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. How you doing?
So Gary gave me one, but he was
So Carrie, the only thing I would say is before you start, can you just describe menu items for the public so they understand? So I don't get stopped by Rita and saying,
Yes.
are you spending money?
Good evening. I believe, as most of council knows, and the public perhaps does not know, as a part of the subsequent developer agreement between Madison Asbury Retail, the city, and Asbury Partners, every year Madison spends $100,000 on capital improvement projects in the waterfront. This is money that is Madison's money. We meet annually with members of the Beachfront Committee. It used to also be with planning. Don Samet used to champion this on the city side. That the reason you see Garrett and I today is simply because Don's not here. Otherwise, this would be presented to you by Don because it's a function of our redevelopment agreement. And we agree upon items that Madison will spend money on in the waterfront. And so this has been going on since 2010. This would be the 6th year of doing so. And tonight we're going to present to you the items that have been discussed and agreed upon amongst staff that we're hoping for council to approve for 2015. And then we also have a small housekeeping item from 2010 to 2014.
So,
And I believe they were also vetted by the beach committee. I think Amy and John, all these items.
correct.
The thing I like about this list is it's a good balance it's good balance of items. Involves a service item, some maintenance equipment, a beautification item, a tech item, the Wi-Fi component, and the lifeguard pavilion, which has been dear to our hearts for several years now. And we're in a position with the hiring of Cooper, Robertson, and Partners, Earl Jackson, to go forward with that project. Does anybody have any questions on this? By the way, it takes 2 staffers to make 1 Don.
So I guess I have.
Do you want us to talk about the items?
I mean,
Yeah.
what I was going to do is run through the list for you. Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. The items that we're proposing tonight include 2 7-cubic-yard compactor containers with an actual cost of $15,879. 1 Ford pickup truck, 4-wheel drive F-250 with a not-to-exceed number of $26,000. Beautification and signage is kind of a pool of money to do several things that we've talked about amongst ourselves, and that's an amount not to exceed $10,000. And then wireless public internet service, or Wi-Fi to the beachfront, for an amount not to exceed $30,000. What Garrett is talking about with Cooper Robertson is that the design and construction of a new lifeguard pavilion is something that was written into the SDA as a standing menu item, where funds can be spent towards its both design and construction. So there are funds that roll over every year if they're not expended, of that $100,000. So every year, there's $100,000 that gets earmarked. You guys spend some of it. If you don't spend some of it, that balance rolls forward into the next year. And so part of what you have in front of you, although it's buried in the last number in the last paragraph of what Garrett handed out, is that the unexpended funds from 2010 to 2014 is $85,147.
So Madison Marquette says to the city, here's $100,000, make improvements to the waterfront that is going to make the beachfront experience better for the public. Whatever that means to the governing body, right? For some of us, it may mean fast broadband Wi-Fi. Others, it means a pickup truck to make sure the garbages are cleaned more often, and, you know, but it is not city money, it's Madison Marquette giving the city money to say, how do we improve the experience to the people coming to the beach? Correct. And here's some of the things that we think the beach utility, Garrett and Joe say, here are some things I think could make the beach cleaner, neater, nicer, more pristine. And here's some things that are going to make people have a better experience there. Signage, in terms of, you know, we get complaints all the time about what people don't know what avenue they're on. So when you're visiting and you go on the beach and somebody says, where do I meet you? We know you're on 5th Ave, we know you're on 4th Ave or 8th Ave. People visiting have no idea what Ave.
That's
So,
a definite item.
yeah,
we're
yeah.
gonna focus on.
So Wi-Fi would be so businesses can start having meetings down, not on the beach, off the beach, at the beach bar, at our businesses, at Langosta, and they'll have fast broadband service. So these are what John and I and Carrie and Garrett came up with to improve the experience this summer.
And Amy, I would just also clarify that for the most part, we actually spend the money on your behalf and not give it to the city.
Okay.
Meaning, you designate the items and we spend it on your behalf. There are times when we'll reimburse you for things if that's just timing-wise works better for everybody.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the clarification.
Typically, it is actually, you give me a resolution that says, this is what we've said we'd like you to spend it on, and then we spend it. And so even on things like the $10,000 for beautification and signage, should you approve this tonight, I won't just go spend it without discussing it with Garrett. So everything gets coordinated between Madison and the waterfront staff.
Great, thank you so much.
I had just a question. The first item.
Yep.
Can we just clarify that?
Yes, we can. So the first item that council's looking at is an amount not to exceed $120,000 for 5 years of public bathroom maintenance, in which Madison actually operated and maintained, both staffed and maintained and paid for the utilities on the public restrooms, which are supposed to have been, per the SDA, we were supposed to enter into a contract where the city took on that responsibility. They didn't, and it was sort of a tacit understanding that Madison was doing that. And so what you're doing here is you're just agreeing to Those 5 years, which have been backed up by information from me to Garrett in terms of the staffing, the hours, bills for actually what we've done. What we've decided on a go-forward basis is that, the city is now staffing them and have been for a few years. The city is also going to, before I spend a dime on anything, if something breaks on Saturday, I don't do anything. I don't even call a plumber until we call Garrett, or Garrett calls the plumber. There may be certain circumstances where Garrett, the city, I should say, is unable to get service. If that's the case and he okays me to spend some money, I would do that, but it would only be because Garrett had said that it was okay. It was an extraordinary circumstance. Other than that, the only thing I would continue to pay for relative to these bathrooms is going to be the utilities that are in my name. So I would look for, on a go-forward basis, a reimbursement or an allowance for the utilities for those public lab shacks. And I should say that we hope to come to you very quickly with a lease agreement for those, where that would all be spelled out. So if we all get, somehow we're all gone, there's no guesswork in this going forward.
And then for 6, so that, what I see is left over 19 plus the 85, that was 19 from this year and 85. Where would that be located? I just don't have all the details. Like, where's that located? How far does that 103 get us in the design and subsequent construction?
It exceeds the amount necessary for the design by maybe a factor of 2. About 50% of that would be going towards design. And, presentation to the council and whatever our obligations are to the planning board. It's going to be located opposite the 4th Avenue Pavilion on the south end of the pavilion, where it's, I don't know how to describe it. There's an old tunnel head that used to go under the boardwalk. So it's south of that, and it's situated in such a way that it's convenient to the steps, the beach entry, so that wouldn't, and not too close to interfere with, when people buy tickets, to interfere with the ingress and egress from the beach. But it is convenient for it. And we're also mindful of the view between, the view corridor that we have to keep unobstructed. So that's essentially why it was, one of the reasons it was chosen there. It's sort of a centralized area between our, the casino and the convention hall.
And 2 other questions. One, do we have an estimate on construction costs? And then just a description of how it would enhance the services.
The estimate on construction will follow with the design process. In other words, as we get a design, we can define the cost.
Right, yeah, no, I get that.
And then, chances are we'll probably wind up in some sort of a financing scheme. In other words, suppose the costs are more than the annual contribution, but we can take the part of the annual contribution and come up with financing and continue to pay the financing through part of the annual, contribution, so that we can, have the building. And it would involve not just a lifeguard first aid room, a lifeguard administrative functions, and the beach bathing administrative functions, as well as the ticket sales. So it's not just germane to lifeguards per se, it's the whole beachfront bathing operation. And if you want to see where have you been in our office on the beachfront?
I have not been inside, only buying a badge.
I mean, when you see how we have to operate, and we're talking about $1 million enterprise here.
Right.
We're very big.